I've always been a bit of a foodie, not in the pretentious way, but I genuinely enjoy cooking and trying new culinary experiences. I save up for special ingredients and plan elaborate meals as a form of self-care after particularly stressful weeks. Last month, I had one of the worst weeks imaginable at work. We lost a major client, my presentation crashed in front of the CEO, and I had to work late every single night. By Friday, I was mentally and physically exhausted. To cheer myself up, I decided to treat myself to something I'd been saving for, a beautiful A5 Wagyu ribeye that I'd purchased from a specialty butcher. If you're not familiar with A5 Wagyu, it's essentially the pinnacle of beef. The grading system goes from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest quality, and the A refers to the yield. It's known for its intense marbling, melt-in-your-mouth texture, and rich buttery flavor. It's also incredibly expensive. This particular steak cost me just over $300. I had been saving this steak for a special occasion, but after the week I'd had, I figured I deserved it. I carefully took it out of the freezer on Thursday night to thaw in the refrigerator, planning to cook it on Friday evening with a nice bottle of red wine as the perfect end to a terrible week. I share an apartment with my roommate Tyler, who I've known since college. We generally get along well and respect each other's space and belongings. We're not particularly close friends, but we're compatible roommates, which is all that really matters when you're sharing a living space. Tyler knows I'm serious about my food. We have a clear system. If something isn't explicitly offered as communal, we don't touch each other's food. It's a simple rule that has worked well for the 2 years we've lived together. On Friday, I finally dragged myself home after another brutal day at work, looking forward to nothing but my perfectly thawed Wagyu and a glass of Cabernet. I opened the refrigerator, reached for the butcher paper where I'd left my steak, and found nothing. Confused, I checked the meat drawer, then the freezer, wondering if I'd somehow misplaced it. But deep down, I already knew what had happened. I found Tyler in the living room playing video games. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Did you happen to see a steak and butcher paper in the fridge?" He didn't even look away from his game. "Oh yeah, I cooked that for lunch. Hope you don't mind, I was starving after the gym." I stood there in disbelief. "You ate my Wagyu steak? The one in the special butcher paper with the Japanese writing on it?" Tyler finally paused his game and looked at me with a shrug. "Yeah, it was really good, super tender." My heart sank. "Tyler, that was a 5 Wagyu. It cost $300. He laughed, clearly thinking I was joking. "Yeah, right. No piece of meat costs that much." "I'm serious," I said, pulling out my phone to show him the receipt from the specialty butcher. "I was saving it for tonight after the week I've had." As he looked at the receipt, his expression changed from amusement to shock, then quickly to defensiveness. "Well, how was I supposed to know? It's just meat. You're always buying fancy food stuff. I figured it was just another steak." "It wasn't just another steak," I said, feeling my frustration rise. "And even if it was, you know the rule about eating each other's food without asking." Tyler rolled his eyes. "Chill out, man. I'll buy you another one. It's not that big a deal." "Fine," I said, handing him the receipt. "Here's where I got it. Same cut, same grade." He looked at the receipt again and balked. "I'm not spending $300 on a piece of meat. That's insane." "But you're fine with eating a $300 piece of meat that I paid for," I countered. "How is that fair?" "Look, I'll get you another steak. A normal steak, from the grocery store. They have some nice ones for like $20. I shook my head. "That's not the same thing at all. You owe me a replacement for what you took." We went back and forth for a while, with Tyler insisting that spending so much on a steak was ridiculous, and that I was being unreasonable for expecting him to replace it exactly. Eventually, he stormed out, saying he would fix it. 2 hours later, he returned with a grocery store package containing a frozen steak that couldn't have cost more than $15. He tossed it on the counter with a triumphant look. "There! Problem solved." I opened the package and examined the steak. A choice-grade sirloin that wasn't even remotely comparable to what he had taken. "This isn't the same thing, Tyler. Not even close." "It's a steak, isn't it? What more do you want?" Silently, I pulled out the receipt from the butcher again and placed it next to the grocery store steak. "I want you to replace what you took." "I already told you, I'm not spending $300 on a steak. That's insane." Then you should have thought about that before eating something that wasn't yours, I replied calmly. Look, I understand you didn't know how expensive it was, but that doesn't change the fact that you took something valuable that belonged to me. You need to make it right. Tyler threw up his hands. And if I don't? What then? Are you going to sue me over a steak? No, I said. But I will expect you to cover all the utilities next month, which comes out to about the same cost. That got his attention. Tyler isn't rich, but he's not hurting for money either. He works in IT and makes a decent salary, certainly enough to replace what he took if he chose to. The utilities in our apartment typically run around $250 to $300 per month, which we normally split equally. That's extortion, he muttered. That's consequences, I corrected. You took something worth $300 from me. You can either replace it directly or provide equivalent compensation. After more grumbling, Tyler finally agreed to go back to the butcher the next day. I went with him to make sure he got exactly the right cut. His eyes nearly popped out of his head when the butcher rang up the total, but he paid it, shooting me dark looks the entire time. When we got home, he handed me the butcher-wrapped package with obvious resentment. Happy now, $300 for a piece of meat that'll be gone in 10 minutes. It's not about the meat, I explained. It's about respecting other people's belongings and taking responsibility when you make a mistake. You wouldn't take my laptop without asking, would you? Or use my car without permission? That's different, he insisted. How? Because you can see the value in those things? The principle is the same. You took something that wasn't yours, and you needed to replace it. That evening, as I was finally enjoying my properly prepared Wagyu with a nice glass of wine, Tyler's girlfriend came over. I overheard him complaining to her about the situation, painting me as a food-obsessed tyrant who forced him to spend $300 to replace just a steak. To my surprise, she didn't take his side. You ate his food without asking, I heard her say. Tyler, that's not cool. You know better than that. The next day, I received a series of texts from mutual friends asking about the steak situation. Apparently, Tyler had been telling people that I was being ridiculous and materialistic for making such a big deal over food. Some friends sided with him, saying that, regardless of the cost, it was just meat, and I was overreacting by making him replace it with an exactly equivalent cut. Nobody can even tell the difference between that fancy Japanese beef and a good quality supermarket steak, one friend texted me. You could have just accepted the replacement he offered and moved on. Others thought Tyler was being childish and irresponsible, pointing out that he wouldn't have been in this situation if he had simply respected the boundaries we had established as roommates. The mixed reactions have made me second-guess myself. Was I too harsh on Tyler? Should I have accepted the grocery store steak and considered it a lesson learned? Or was I right to insist on a proper replacement for what was taken without permission? I still believe that if you take something that doesn't belong to you, you should replace it with something of equal value. The fact that Tyler didn't understand or appreciate the value of the Wagyu doesn't diminish his responsibility. But I also wonder if I could have handled the situation more gracefully. Tyler has been cold to me ever since, acting as if I somehow wronged him rather than the other way around. The atmosphere in our apartment has been tense, with him making passive-aggressive comments about my expensive tastes and how I care more about food than people. It's frustrating because I feel like I'm being villainized for simply expecting basic respect for my belongings. If I had eaten something of his without permission, I would have immediately offered to replace it, regardless of the cost. That's just common courtesy. At the same time, I'm starting to wonder if this whole situation was worth the damage to our living arrangement. We have 4 months left on our lease, and I'm not looking forward to 4 months of tension over a steak, even if it was an exceptionally expensive one. So I have to ask, for insisting my roommate replace my expensive Wagyu steak with an equivalent cut after he ate it without permission, am I the a-hole?